Hey there, this is Mr. Icarus, and welcome to yet another edition of Doom Mod Madness. This time round I've got a little bit of a double bill for you because I'm covering a few maps that I quite enjoyed recently, and I find that when it comes to maps, I can't usually ramble on as long as I'd usually like, so I thought why not give you two in one episode. I'm just nice like that. But to kick things off, we're looking at Umbra of Fate, and this was a map that immediately grabbed my attention just from the visuals alone, making fantastic use of light and dark, and even interesting, stylish use of color, something you'll doubtlessly notice as this footage rolls on. But the setup for Umbra of Fate is you're a huntsman doing hunty things in the forest, and on the way back to your cabin to return to your wife and child, you stumble across a mysterious ravine, something ethereal and strange calling you to explore it, ultimately landing you in this strange, cultist and demon-infested temple. As you may have gathered by this point, this is not a map that leans too heavily on its sense of atmosphere, exceptional as it is. Instead, it chooses to populate its halls and rooms with a wide variety of interesting and challenging enemy encounters. Of the enemies, you'll certainly notice a few of them harken from the Hexen heretic side of the fence, certainly befitting of a map that has Lovecraftian cultist themes. At first, I found the Pyro Succubus enemy here to be a little troublesome to deal with, considering I'd never really run into it in any of my travels before, but after a few encounters, it kinda made sense, kinda straddling the line between Imp and Mancubus with the fire pattern, and easily dispatched, especially with the aid of a super shotgun. Intriguingly, Umbra of Fate is a map that is also very eager to make sure you know what you're doing, or at least know that what you're doing is the correct thing. And in some situations that's helpful. In this situation, I'd say that it feels a little too hand-holdy, especially when you're dealing with a pretty simple room setup such as this one. One of the more interesting aspects of Umbra of Fate is how it handles its storytelling, and I've experienced in various map packs where between missions you'll have the intermission screen, but Umbra of Fate does things a little differently. It brings the intermission into the mission. Now, if this were handled poorly, it could potentially be quite intrusive, effectively putting the brakes to the gameplay, but thankfully these moments occur at quite natural transition points, quite literally as you're moving from one section of the map to another. Mercifully, these moments are used quite sparingly throughout the course of this map, really serving as a reminder for the deteriorating state of mind of your protagonist, and adding a little bit of flavor, a little bit of texture to what comes next. As far as storytelling devices go, it serves its purpose fine. There's no one true method to effectively convey a story when it comes to maps, mods, or video games in general, but as long as it doesn't detract too much from the core gameplay, then that's probably the ideal solution. During the course of Umbra of Fate, you'll also run into a few encounters that you could probably describe as boss battles. This one with the Cyber Demon here certainly falls under that category, and it's actually handled in a very interesting way. At first you think it's going to be pretty straightforward until the Cyber Demon teleports into this chamber in the middle and sicks a whole bunch of demonic goons on you. And yeah, this is actually a really cool and interesting way of breaking up the battle. And if you're worried that this is just an excuse for you to drain your ammunition before the Cyber Demon comes back for a second go, you'll note that ammunition does in fact respawn in this arena after a set amount of time. That said, I have a little bit of a bugbear with this particular battle, one that seems to plague the boss encounters of Umbra of Fate, and that's that it's really poorly paced. I mean, this section in particular is fairly arduous, not because it's difficult, but because it just takes so much time to take out the trash. You've got to hack through a significant amount of cacodemons, pinkies, and imps, all in the pursuit of finally having another crack at that Cyber Demon ass. And, you let off a few more shots, deal a little bit of damage, and the Cyber Demon goes, you know what, I'm gonna have another cigarette break, fuck you, I'm going back in the chamber. and you have to deal with the same thing again. There's no significant variation in what you have to deal with. It's just do it again. Do it again. Do it again and again and again. And it doesn't even have the good grace of abiding by the rule of 3. It goes further than that, and I just got so very, very bored. Now, if this were just a one-off problem, it probably wouldn't have bothered me so much, but the truth is, the exact same issue repeats with the final boss of Umbra of Fate. So you go through the same motions. You keep hammering away at him, depleting his health, until he decides to go for a cigarette break. In this case, he goes to straddle a Nightmare Realm. Damage reduced by 99%. I hope you enjoy seeing that prompt, because it pops up a whole lot during this boss fight, and you're instead forced to fight these 4 Ifrits instead, each of which have a significant amount of health. Thankfully, you can separate them out by taking advantage of the lava floor in the middle of the arena, which traps them every now and again, but I don't think I could conceive of any situation where having to fight these more than 2 times in a row would be entertaining. But it keeps going. It keeps going and going and going and going and going. And I didn't think it was possible, but I reached a level of not giving a toss anymore that, quite frankly, shocked me. What comprehensively broke my will during this section, however, was an issue I ran into at least twice, which was one of the Ifrits actually getting stuck underneath its spawning pillar, meaning that the boss wouldn't return from his cigarette break until I'd killed him. The only way for me to do so would be to no-clip through the pillar and finish the dumb idiot off anyway, and I just couldn't be bothered anymore. It's one of those shocking examples of a relatively minor element of a mod nearly ruining the entire experience for me, because outside of the boss encounters, I was having a lovely time with this mod. I was reveling in the atmosphere. It was nice looking, nice sounding, relatively challenging to play through, and then this stuff happens, and it just refuses to end. If there were ever a textbook example of things outstaying their welcome, this would be it. I think the thing that frustrates me most about coming to some kind of consensus about Umbra of Fate is that for the most part this is a really genuinely good map. It's got fantastic lighting, atmospherics, music, level structure, it's got some pretty good challenging encounters in there, but there's just these 2 or 3 points during the course of it that fracture the experience and threaten to shatter the whole thing, and it's that kind of thing that sticks like a splinter in my mind. I can't help but think of those frustrations when I think of Umbra of Fate, but at the very least, I would still say this is definitely worth checking out. At least, if you've seen this video, you'll be forewarned of the potential frustrations that await you. I just hope that the boss battles don't test your patience quite as much as they tested mine. Maybe I just had a particularly bad bout of luck. Next up we have a map by the name of the Quirky Domain, and I've got to be honest, that name, that could do with some improvement. There's got to be something a little bit more robust for a map such as this, because in reality this is a map that does a lot of very, very cool stuff. So what exactly is this cool stuff I'm on about? Well, to be honest, I'd advise you to actually download this map and play for yourself before you allow me to elaborate any further, because truthfully the best way to experience this map is first time through. Seriously, I genuinely think you'll enjoy it. Just give it a go, play it, come back, and watch the rest of this video. Unless you don't really care that much, in which case, continue watching. Got it? Good. So this is a map that takes great advantage of non-Euclidean level design. It's a complicated sounding phrase that I'm essentially using to sound smart, but at its core describes impossible level design. Spaces that fit within much smaller spaces, or doorways that seamlessly connect you to completely different places. Basically, this is a map that will make your brain do a little bit of a backflip, just as it tries to tease out the whole logic behind how this map works. It's a wonderfully disorientating feeling. If anything, this also reminds me of another map that I covered a fair while back now called Impossible: A New Reality, where similar tricks were employed to disorientate and confound, and it's good company to be in. So how exactly does the trick work? I don't know, something to do with teleporters, I guess, some quirk of the GZ Doom engine. All I know is it's not particularly easy to pull off. Has to be done with a fair amount of tinkering, and it's probably the reason why you don't see this kind of map very often, but they're always very interesting when they come along. You may be wondering how playable this map actually is with regards to navigation and the potential to get very, very lost, but thankfully this map has a very strong sense of architecture, with each section presenting something pretty visually memorable to guide you back should you need to return. Encounter-wise, you'll find that, at least on Hurt Me Plenty difficulty, everything here is very manageable indeed. I didn't really find too many of the encounters to be of the bullshit grade variety, things that would require you to die 2 or 3 times before you get the gist of it. Instead, it does a very good job of signposting a lot of what you're going to be running into, be it with ammo placement or foreshadowing. And then you run into moments like this, which just make you want to stop and admire for a while as your brain contemplates the implications of what you're seeing and backflips endlessly into infinity. If there's one part of this map I'd single out as being a little weaker in comparison to the rest of it, I'd probably point out this section here. Not because it's especially bad or anything, just that it feels kind of disposable. It's a section where you'll either spend quite a long time looping around and getting lost within its gullies, or you will pretty much immediately stumble on the temple, which is the core objective of this part of the map. And really, I thought there would have been a bigger gimmick, a little bit more of a quirk to the gullies. Maybe you would have had to follow the towers with lamps on the top, the right color maybe, in order to reach this place, but that didn't exactly seem to be the case. It's not especially a deal breaker, it's just that this section feels like there are bits and pieces that could have been improved upon or exploited to make the map a little bit more interesting. Take the temple itself, for example. You have to flip 2 switches on either side of it in order to fill the ceiling pool. And once you've flipped one switch, there is nothing stopping you from just going straight through the temple to the opposite side and flipping the second one, which I thought was a little disappointing, all things considered. In fact, it's something that I didn't think would be so easy first time around. I actually turned tail, went straight back into the gullies, and started getting lost, thinking that that was the way I was supposed to reach the other side of the temple. But no, I could have just walked straight through, and to be honest, I think having to navigate the gullies again would have been a little bit more interesting. A bit more of an incentive to do some exploring, maybe. If I had to pick my hands-down favorite part of playing this map, however, it would be this little section through here, because it shows that this map isn't just content with having one trick up its sleeve. It's got something else to occasionally surprise you with, and this section didn't see it coming, didn't expect it, was very intrigued by the fact that all of my inputs result in the words on the screen, and just forced to watch this demon melee until this wonderfully atmospheric, really spooky section that has you moving through the frozen ghosts of what you've just witnessed and leaves you wondering, am I going to have to fight the rest of that? Do I really want to have to press the switch? I love it. I genuinely do. It's a wonderful little section that subverts your expectations and just leaves you a little on edge, wondering, what other tricks is this map gonna pull next? Now, even though I dropped the spoiler warning earlier, there's still a few things that I'm gonna leave uncovered here. There's a few Easter eggs and a few moments that I really don't want to have to spoil, and I genuinely think should be best experienced fresh. There is one moment after the one that I mentioned earlier that elicited a unprompted wow from my face, which doesn't happen very often. Tremendously impressed by it, and you really do have to see it for yourself. But this is just a shining example of inventiveness in mapping, and one that I'm reasonably sure nearly every single one of you will enjoy, and you should. And to that end, if you're interested in playing either of the maps that I have covered today, you'll find the link, as usual, in the description below. While I'm at it, I'd like to give a great big thank you to my wonderful patrons over on Patreon. Thank you so much for supporting the channel and for helping to make content like this possible. If you're interested in lending a hand yourself, maybe you'd like to see your name in the credits or gain access to new editions of my videos early, you can find the link to my Patreon page also in the description below. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Feel free to let me know what you thought in the comments, and feel free to suggest any mods or maps that you'd like to see me cover in future editions of Doom Mod Madness. This has been Mr. Icarus. Thank you very much for watching. Icarus out.